Hello fellow YouTubers and fellow HALLICRAFTERS collectors. Well, it's now December 2015 and the year is almost gone. But before it passes away, I'd like to show you my latest find. This is a HALLICRAFTERS SX110 general coverage shortwave receiver. Of course, it's a tube model. It has 8 tubes, vacuum tubes. And this was built between 1959 and 1961. Which seems to me like kind of a short production run for a HALLICRAFTERS radio. Original purchase price of this radio was $159.95, which doesn't seem like anything today, but back in 1961 it was probably a substantial amount. These old receivers, the old tube receivers, have acquired the affectionate nickname boat anchor. These are called boat anchors, and I can really see why. Inside is a chassis made completely of heavy gauge steel, and the actual case itself is made from heavy gauge steel. Put all this together and the radio weighs around 25 pounds, and that is pretty darn heavy. And I would venture to say that all this steel was good old American USA steel from Pittsburgh. Back in the day when this radio was made, a product stamped Made in USA was revered and respected throughout the world. What that meant was quality, integrity, and long life. We were the manufacturers. And this was certainly true of HALLICRAFTERS radios. This radio represents quality, integrity, and certainly long life, because here it is in 2015, sitting on my workbench in my workshop in beautiful condition, and it still plays. So where did I come across this wonderful radio? Well, I found it in what I consider to be a highly unlikely place. I found it in what I call a classical antique shop. This is a real antique shop with real antiquities. No toys, nothing from Star Wars, nothing from the 70s, no what my wife calls foo-foo, and no decorator items, just antiques. This is called the Ventura Antique Market, and it's on Thompson Street in Ventura, Southern California. Proprietor is a nice gentleman named David Marcus. So I was in the Ventura Antique Market one afternoon, wandering around looking at various things, and something high up on a shelf caught my eye. It appeared to be a shortwave radio. But how could a shortwave radio be for sale in an antique store? Anyway, I got the owner, Mr. Marcus. He brought the radio down for me, and upon closer examination it was indeed the SX110. And amazingly enough, the front panel was in pristine condition. And this is very important to me. This is the most important thing when I buy a radio to restore, put in my collection, or to resell. The panel was beautiful. All knobs original and in good condition. All the control labeling was absolutely sharp and clear, no smudges. Nothing blurred, nothing missing. And the dial faces were also in excellent condition, no scuff marks, no scratches. So I knew right away I had to have this radio. So I piled it in the bed of my Toyota pickup and drove it all the way back to the San Fernando Valley. And here it is in my workshop, sitting on my workbench, ready for a demonstration. Next, I would like to show you a close-up of the front panel so you can see just what good condition it's in. Pay close attention to the knobs and the control labeling. It's all very beautiful. I'm going to go over each control briefly and explain what it does, and this is for the benefit of anybody who is not familiar with shortwave radios. And here you see what I think is a very beautiful front panel in pristine condition. I think this is one of the most attractive radios HALLICRAFTERS ever designed. Over here we have an antenna trimmer, which is a little control to help tune your antenna to maximize the signal. Here is a radio frequency sensitivity control. When it is clockwise, automatic volume control is on. The band selector switch goes from 1 to 4 and selects 4 different frequency ranges. Band 1 is a broadcast band. Bands 2, 3, and 4 are shortwave bands. This receiver has the ability to adjust selectivity from normal to very sharp, which can help separate crowded stations. And that is because this receiver has what is called a crystal filter in the IF stage. Now the model number SX110, the X stands for crystal filter. Over here we have a switch for AM, which is regular broadcast, and CW, which would be continuous wave, used for code reception or nowadays single sideband reception. This is a control for the crystal filter. There's a noise limiter that can help to eliminate electrical noise from your signal, a regular old volume control, a pitch control that works with the BFO for receiving code, and here is the power on-off switch, which is combined with a tone control. Tone control for high, medium, and low tone. On the extreme right side, we have a jack for headphones, and we have a receive standby switch. If this were used by a radio amateur, he would be listening in the receive position, and he would go to the standby position when he was transmitting. And up in the right-hand corner is a very unusual S meter. That's a signal strength meter, and it deflects vertically rather than horizontally, which is kind of unusual. Shortwave radios typically have two controls for tuning: a broad tuning control, which is calibrated here from the broadcast band through 30 megacycles, and a very sharp tuning control, also called a band spread. On shortwave radios, the band spread may be calibrated and may not be calibrated depending upon the model. With this model, the band spread is calibrated for 5 amateur bands: 10 meters, 15 meters, 20 meters, 40 meters, and 80 meters. And the frequencies are spread way out on this nice big slide rule dial, which makes it almost possible to tell exactly what frequency you're on. Now I say almost possible because this is a tube analog receiver. It's not digital, so you never know exactly where you are, but this slide rule dial lets you come pretty close. Now let me show you the downside. Yes, unfortunately there is a downside to this receiver. A lot of these old radios did not have their own self-contained speaker. They had to be hooked up by a wire to an external speaker. I think this was true with the better shortwave radios. And this radio is no exception. There's no internal speaker. So some previous owner was not happy with that arrangement. He did an unspeakable thing. He drilled a series of holes right through the top of the receiver to simulate a speaker grill, and then he bolted a speaker inside underneath. This is an absolutely deplorable, horrible thing to do. You are defacing a piece of electronic history, a piece of radio history. This is an absolute no-no. If someone is going to restore these radios or work on them in any way, they have to be restored to original condition and left that way. Let me show a close-up at the top of this receiver so you can see the horrible job he did drilling holes right through to make a simulated speaker grill. Now here's the way some thoughtless, totally irresponsible previous owner defaced this beautiful receiver. He drilled a series of holes right through the top of the receiver, trying to simulate a speaker grill. And then he mounted a little 8-ohm speaker on the inside. So this fellow was not very bright for two reasons. Number one, you don't deface a beautiful cabinet like this. And number two, this radio was designed to operate on a 3.2 ohm or 500 ohm external speaker, not an internal 8-ohm speaker. I haven't had to do much by way of repair to this radio, but I'll tell you what I did. First of all, I replaced that big old can electrolytic with 4 separate electrolytic capacitors, and I gave the radio an RF alignment, and I also put on a new 3-conductor power cord, which I do with all my radios. And then I thought I might as well replace the 2 dial cords while the radio was out of the case. The dial cord for main tuning was very easy, no problem. 2 pulleys involved. I did it in 10 minutes. The dial cord for the band spread, however, was a real bear, really difficult. In fact, it took 4 hands to accomplish. And I have to thank my very patient wife, Christine, for her assistance. Without her help, I don't think any of my radios would have new dial cords. So thanks to Christine. And now the radio plays very well. I'm happy with it. I don't think there's anything else I have to do. Before I sign off, I'll give you a demonstration of single sideband on 40 meters, and you can see just how well it receives single sideband. But before I go, let me wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And again, thank you very much for watching.
42 stroke. Good for you. Good for you, Larry. I used to do that. I had a 67 Chevy too, with a 327 built by Rod Phillips, same guy that built the Shores and Hess car back in the late 60s. And it would turn 1121, 130, and I drove it on the street.
Well, my 56 will turn 10, and it's got a World Block 427 small block stroker in it with Pro Comp heads on it.
Yeah, it sounds good.
He said, talk about the hot one.
The new one?
Yeah.
It's the V model. It's rear-wheel drive, 640 horse, and comes with recliner seats in it. It is something else, but it's $107,000.
Oh, well, hell, just go buy it.
Yeah, with your money, Larry, not mine.
I don't care for that kind of car. I would have one. I don't want no more. Me and my wife, we just sold the car because we had it sitting out here in the yard and we never used it. Got a new install. We never drove it.
Well, to give you an idea, on the right side of the garage, my wife's office takes up the far right. I've got a 2012 Chevy Cruze Eco. Best I've done with that is from